You're listening to Financial Advisor Marketing, the best show on the planet for financial advisors who want to get more clients without all the stress. You're about to get the real scoop on everything from lead generation to closing the deal. James is the founder of theadvisorcoach.com, where you can find an entire suite of products designed to help financial advisors grow their businesses more rapidly than ever before. Now, here is your host, James Pollard.
Hey, financial advisors. Welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast. I know I say it frequently when I have a guest that I've got a special treat for you, but this is someone that I really respect. He's got accolades on top of accolades on top of accolades. He's got San Diego Magazine, Top Advisor, Investment News, Top 40 Under 40. He's got Young Advisor to Watch in 2017. And he's bold enough and generous enough to share what works and what doesn't work in his own words and his own website, the Experiments in Advisor Marketing Podcast. And he's got another podcast on top of that. And I think I vibe well with this guy because he's a hard worker. Obviously, he does a lot of stuff and does a lot of cool things with marketing and with financial services. So I'd like to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Taylor Schulte. How are you doing, man? I'm so glad to actually be here with you.
James, yeah, I'm doing really well. I appreciate all the kind words, the nice introduction, and I appreciate you having me on the show.
So for the financial advisors who are maybe living under a rock and have no idea who you are, would you like to do a brief introduction, who you are, how you got into the industry, why you like it, just the basic intro stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it high level and then you tell me what you want to dig into. I am a native San Diegan, which is actually kind of rare. It's a very transient city. A lot of people coming in and out, big military presence. We don't have a lot of different industries here. So it is rare, but I grew up here, went to school in Arizona. Right out of school, 22 years old, got my first job as a financial advisor at a large brokerage firm here in San Diego. I always knew that I wanted to work in finance. I've told the story before that, my grandfather gave me some shares of a stock for Christmas when I was about 12 years old. And I was really disappointed because he usually would give us $20 or $50 in cash. And that year he gave all of his grandkids a stock certificate. And that just kind of, I think, piqued my interest in the world of finance. He taught us how to look up the stock in a newspaper and what a dividend was and all that fun stuff. So I knew that I wanted to work in the world of finance. I just didn't really know what that meant. Unlike a lot of students I talk to today who, know all about the fiduciary standard and fee only and RIA, and they're graduating with their CFPs. I just didn't know anything. And so I had a few job offers out of school. I took the one from Morgan Stanley here in San Diego. And back then, so it was 2007, you were just thrown into the fire. It was just get your licenses, here's a desk, here's a phone. And it was something bring in $15 million in 2 years or something. And, I was just young and naive and I didn't even know what any of that meant. So I just took the challenge and I battled through it. Shortly after, obviously, we had 08, 09. So that threw a wrench in a lot of things, but it also gave me some extra flexibility with my sales goals. I forget what they did at the time, but obviously they had to adjust things knowing that the market's down 50%. Long story short, I battled there for 5 or 6 years. I built up a small book of clients and I left. I started reading Michael Kitces at the time, about 2012, and started learning about the independent world and, fee only and fiduciary and RIA and all that stuff. And so I jumped ship. I went to the independent world, worked for an independent firm for a couple of years. I had taken my clients with me. And, it was at that time I just said, I was really interested in getting creative and doing different things. And I was so tired of asking for permission and being told no and kind of clawing my way to yes. And I just had all these fun, creative ideas, a lot of stuff that I talk about today on the marketing podcast. And my wife was working, we didn't have kids. And I thought, it's kind of now or never if I'm going to go do my own thing. So in 2014, I launched my firm. So about 6 years ago, I started with, a handful of clients, about $15, $20 million in assets. We're approaching 100 million now, so we've grown pretty substantially. And as I'm happy to dig into, most of our growth is purely organic, meaning people are finding us. We're not reaching out, soliciting them. So, we put out really good content in a few different formats and use some unique marketing strategies to, again, really just put good information out there and let consumers identify whether or not we're a potential fit and then reach out to us. So I've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of success in marketing. I've also had a lot of failures, and I try to share both so advisors can learn from those failures and maybe shortcut some of the things that I've done. So that's the short of it.
Well, that's one of the things I like most about you is there are a lot of people out there who will share win after win after win after win. Like that's cool. And yeah, it's nice to see people winning and doing well with marketing experiments, but what about all the stuff that didn't go so well? And I mean, that's why you have your show Experiments in Advisor Marketing. Well, just out of my personal curiosity, what made you want to get involved in the wild and wacky world of podcasting?
Well, I don't really know. 3.5, 4 years ago, it just seemed like podcasting, was starting to get popular. I was listening to more and more podcasts, and I was just like this weird, like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. And I had found this podcast launch service. And this is one of the mistakes that I've talked about, actually, and we can talk more about it if you'd like. I'd found this podcast launch service where you pay them, I don't know, $5,000 or $6,000, and They'll help you bring your podcast to life. They'll, coach you on what equipment to buy. They'll help you with the branding and the show name and the editing for your first 3 episodes and the cover art, everything that you would need to launch a podcast. And so at the time, I just kind of felt like podcasting was, I guess I should back up and say, I've always been really involved in FinCon. So FinCon's a community of personal finance, people around the world, whether you're a writer, an author, a blogger, building courses, whatever, kind of all walks of life there. And podcasting was starting to get more popular in the FinCon crowd, I think, which is what kind of led me to it. And we still are seeing a lot of parallels between the podcasting world and the blogging world. And I have always struggled to sit down and write, and I thought I'll give this podcasting thing a go. So anyhow, I paid this group to help me get this thing off the ground, and that's where it all started. But I stumbled for probably 1.5 years just trying to find my groove and figure out how this thing was going to work. And I say that it's one of my mistakes paying this group to launch the podcast because we all these days have, an iPhone in our pocket, and, all these phones have native recording apps on them. And I always tell people, before you go spend $6,000 or even $1,000 or even 30 minutes of your time researching podcast equipment online, like go and record a few episodes into your phone and just see how it feels. And I would even go as far as say, publish those. I mean, it's pretty easy these days to jump on one of these apps and publish a podcast. Like just record 3 episodes into your phone and publish it and put it out there and just see how it feels. And if it feels like something that you enjoy and you're good at and you're getting, some initial good feedback from, then you can pour gasoline on it and go pay somebody $5,000 to take it to the next level. And you see this with a lot of great marketers in and out of our industry. You think of somebody like Gary Vee, who comes up in marketing conversations. Go back to his very first YouTube video. It's not good, right? He didn't have a professional videographer following him around. He just started with what he had in his pocket or whatever camera he had in his closet, and he built on it from there. And I think too often, I'll pick on myself. Too often, like I think I can just spend some money and it'll magically solve my problem. Like I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
I don't need to do
tons of advisors.
Yeah. I don't need to do the hard work. I can just pay $6,000 and I'll have the best podcast in the world, which is really not the case. You really have to do that hard work first before, you can start to pour gasoline on these things. So that's where I'm at. I'll just say one last thing. You hear this number in the marketing world of 3 years. It takes 3 years for things to really start to work. And that's exactly what I experienced with my retirement podcast. It took exactly 3 years to start to gain real traction and start to actually generate real revenue for my firm from the podcast. So it just takes a while. Stay consistent, kind of find your voice, figure out, who your audience is. But these things do take time.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in that, especially like just ship the product, get whatever it is that you're doing, record it on your phone. A lot of people listening to this podcast right now may not know, I used to have a show called the Advisor Coach Podcast, and I did all that myself. So I kind of like followed your advice unknowingly. I mean, I did it because I was a control freak, quite honestly. And then I started paying a company like 40 episodes in. So I took way too long. I wish I had you telling me that, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with like, do the thing first, then hire it out if it's something you like, if it's something you want to do. So that's awesome. And you create a lot of content. I know you're a busy person, and I like watching your interviews online. And one of the favorites that I have is the one you did with Samantha Russell. I saw it on her YouTube channel. I don't know if she posted it elsewhere. And you talked about how you generate leads through SEO. And I kind of want to keep the show, I want to steer it in this direction because I feel like I'm going to title this show like how financial advisors can generate leads or set appointments with SEO. So we'll talk about that. How did you get started learning about SEO?
I think it's just purely out of curiosity and kind of desperation. I had started my firm in 2014 and I had this blank slate and what felt like all the freedom in the world. Now I didn't have anybody really telling me no, except for my attorney. So it was like time to get creative and try different things. And one of the things I noticed is that financial advisors are not very visible online. And I compare it to somebody like a personal injury attorney, who we have a few as clients. And, it costs them tens of thousands of dollars per month just to get visibility online because every personal injury attorney out there is, playing that game. And so what I figured out is since advisors and very, very large successful firms are not, are not doing that, not optimizing their websites appropriately, it just didn't really take much in order for me to nail down the basics of SEO and start to see some real results. Since you want to dig in more to this topic, I want to back up and say that the first step in all of this, before you start nerding out on SEO and learning how to optimize your website and all that stuff, is to make sure that your home base, your website is dialed in so that when these potential clients show up through your marketing efforts, through your SEO efforts, they have a journey. Like they know what to do once they land on your website. You could have the greatest visibility in the world and the best SEO optimized website in the world. But if they get to your website and they don't know if they're in the right place, they don't know if you're a good fit, they don't know what the first step is, they don't know what to do. If there's 10 things for them to do on your homepage, they're going to be paralyzed. And so I would encourage all advisors, step one is to reevaluate your home base. This is your storefront. And I feel like so many advisors are afraid to spend money and time here, but this is your storefront. I've spent in the last 6 years, I've easily spent over $50,000 on our website because it pays the bills. Again, that's our storefront. There's a lot to unpack with how to properly design your website and your home base so that people take action once they land there. My advice just for this show today is to go read the book StoryBrand. If you've never read the book StoryBrand by Donald Miller, go pick up that book, read it. They have tons of resources on their website. They have a podcast. You can just go deep into the world of StoryBrand and start to learn about how to create a proper website and a proper user journey so that when people land on it, they actually take action. So I just want to make sure that we really highlight that and drill that in before we start talking about some of the tactical stuff.
So producer Jonathan, the person who's usually here when it's not just me flying solo with a guest, he loves that book and it's required reading for his team. So financial advisors, if you're listening to this like at the gym or driving, if you're driving anywhere now, Taylor's website, Define Financial, the first thing you see when you get there is retirement planning for individuals over age 50. Brilliant. And then you got reduce taxes, invest smarter, optimize income. Again, brilliant. You're telling people who you work with and how you help them. Now, when I first wanted to get Taylor on the show, a lot of times when I have guests on the show, it starts with like a little thought. It's just one day I'm like, hey, I want this guy on the show. And then like 6 months later, it finally happens. So when I first decided that I wanted him on the show, his call to action button was start here. But when I finally reached out to him, I was like, hey, do you want to get on the show? I noticed it was changed to get your free assessment. And I don't really want to make any assumptions about that. Can you explain why you changed it or if this is just another experiment? I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, let's back up first and acknowledge that on your website, on your homepage, you should have one single clear call to action, not 5, not 10, not 3, one single clear call to action. If a user lands on your website, if a potential client lands on your website, there should be one thing that you want them to do. And it could simply be, I want them to join my mailing list, right? My email list. It doesn't have to be schedule a call and become a client, but whatever that one thing is, that's what we want our one call to action to be. We want to make that really easy for that user to take that action if they feel like they're in the right place. Most websites, not just advisor websites, most advisor websites, the call to action is something like learn more or contact us or schedule a call. It's something either a little bit too daunting or something that's not descriptive, it's not enticing. They see it on every other website. So just kind of they gloss over it. And so I've talked about before that the magic of the start here button. These words start here just seem to be magical because they just stand out. They're just different. It's not learn more or contact us or meet the team or something. It's start here. So if somebody lands on your website, they feel like they're potentially in the right place. They've got this big call to action button that says start here. And for whatever reason, I don't know enough about psychology and messaging. Users love to click on a button that says start here. Now, that doesn't just mean you're ready to go and all of a sudden people are going to start scheduling calls with you, but that's a really good starting point to have a call to action that people actually click. I went through, I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to think outside the box. And so I went through a website audit during COVID. When COVID hit and things kind of, people were paralyzed and we didn't see a lot of action here at the firm, I thought, well, I'm going to work on kind of the boring behind the scenes stuff that often gets neglected. And so I went through I hired somebody to do a website audit, a user experience audit. Somebody with a fresh pair of eyes outside of our industry to come to our website and provide some feedback and some recommendations for how we can improve things. And one of the things that they noted was, hey, we understand like start here is a great call to action. We know that it works and it captures attention. We feel like you could make it more descriptive. So when somebody clicks on that start here button, they don't really know what's behind that button. They don't know what's going to happen. So once they go to that next page, it's going to kind of surprise them a little bit. Well, on that page, it's essentially offering a free retirement assessment. That's what we offer potential clients. It's essentially a light financial plan we don't charge for. It's a way for them to see our value, the types of recommendations we make, our philosophy, our approach, all that stuff. It's a way for them to evaluate our firm. So it's a free assessment. And so we thought, well, why don't we just tell them that on the button? Why don't we just tell them so they're not surprised? Like once they get to that page, they're not surprised and taken back by anything. And so we just made it more descriptive. Also, it has an element of what's in it for them built into it, right? They're getting something out of it. It's not, again, start here is great, but they don't really know what's in it for them. They don't know what's, again, behind that button. I'm offering them something of value that makes it even more enticing. It also kind of weeds people out too, because if they don't want a free assessment, if they're not interested in hiring us or evaluating us, then they're probably not going to click that button, and that's totally fine. So it just seemed to kind of optimize things a little bit further. I'll acknowledge that the start here page, the page that you're led to by clicking that button, has always been the second most visited page on our website. So even swapping out start here versus free retirement assessment, I'm not seeing much of a difference. It's still the second most visited page on our website. It would be really challenging for me to kind of A/B test it and see what works better. There's a lot of kind of moving parts and data to sort through. I would just say, I just think it feels better. It's just more descriptive. So it just kind of feels better to me. But I think either call to action would work.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I actually do have a psychology background. Like that's what I went to school for. And I can see like that's what works. And the other thing I like, when people get to the assessment page, your copy is on point because, and I mean, for financial advisors listening to the show, they also know that I come from the copywriting world. Like that's my bread and butter. That's what it is. Your copy is really on point because you say certain things such as, how do I know if I'm a good fit? And you say individuals over age 50, good, who are retired or want to know they have the ability to retire one day. That's amazing from my point of view, because that's like psychological reassurance. And that's something a lot of financial advisors completely missed. It's just cut and dry. Yours is like reassuring to these people.
Yeah, I'll also say too, there is this trend, and you can kind of capitalize on this trend through your messaging. There's this trend with consumers that they don't want to just work for 30 years and retire and do nothing. So, we've used the phrase work optional, and consumers seem to really latch onto that phrase work optional. They just want to know that they have the ability to retire one day, that work can become optional. Again, gone are the days that are like, I'm going to retire at age 60 and I just want to know that I can be done and quit work and then do nothing. It just doesn't seem to resonate, at least not with the types of people that we're talking about. So that's what we're trying to capture there, is somebody who absolutely loves their job and they can't ever see themselves not working at all. I don't want to scare those people away. And so just a little bit of information there from a marketing perspective.
Now, I think there's a book called Work Optional. I mean, I read a lot of books in the FIRE movement, and I'm in like fat FIRE groups because like I personally, that's what I'm going after is fat FIRE. the next thing that I see you have is diligent savers who have accumulated investment and retirement assets of $750,000 or more. Pretty standard stuff. But then you throw in this, excluding real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good example of a qualifying sentence, because I know a lot of people will say, yeah, I've got $750,000 in assets. It's like, oh, but not your house and not your vacation property or your rental property. So I really like that too.
Great. Yeah. We worked really hard on that messaging. The goal is we don't want to waste anyone's time and we don't want to waste our team's time. And so we just want to be really clear about everything so that when they actually schedule that phone call, we're just talking, personality fit, answering a few basic questions. We're not having to go through all these things on the phone. Also, I don't want my office manager to get stuck answering these questions. I don't want her to get stuck having to answer our minimums and what's excluded and included. It just shouldn't fall on her shoulders. So try to get, all potential questions answered on that page. So then when they schedule that phone call, that's all out of the way.
I didn't even think about that. That's really smart.
Hey, financial advisors. If you'd like even more help building your business, I invite you to subscribe to James's monthly paper and ink newsletter, The James Pollard Inner Circle. When you join today, you'll get more than $1,000 worth of bonuses, including exclusive interviews that aren't available anywhere else. Head on over to theadvisorcoach.com/coaching to learn more.
So back to the SEO thing, are you the person doing the work and building the backlinks and optimizing the headers? Do you hire it out? Do you have like a task list? Like what is help me visualize that and explain to like I'm 5.
Sure. Well, to answer your first question, I do it all. I've done it all since day one. I've taught myself. It's really not overly complicated. You said explain it to you like you're 5, which is great because really all you need to do is nail down the basics of SEO. The analogy that I've given to kind of start this conversation is, when you save a file to your computer, you give it a name, right? So that you can find that file later on, either through a search tool or some organization method that you have. And the same can be applied to your website. We need to give it some sort of description so that Google and the search engines know who you are, what you do, and when to put your website in front of other people that are going to the search box and entering different keywords. So those are called meta descriptions and meta titles, or broadly referred to as meta tags. And so meta tags are really just like words and descriptions so that Google and search engines know what the heck you're doing and when to put you in front of search users. So that's kind of the first step, is just make sure that your website has proper titling and proper descriptions on the back end. This has nothing to do with like the front end of your website. These are just little things on the back end that you just got to type in that most people miss, so that Google just knows who you are and what you do. Just the words define financial, like those are meaningless. Google doesn't know if I'm a bank or where I'm at. They don't know if I'm in San Diego or, in the UK or whatever. Like they just don't know anything about me. Now, I say that like Google's pretty smart, right? They have a lot of data points on us. So they probably know more than we think that they know, but we still want to help Google connect those dots. So kind of the first step in the world of SEO is just give your site a title. That title should include, your firm name, of course. It should also include kind of what you do. So ours says something like Define Financial - Certified Financial Planner in San Diego, right? So they know that we're financial planners. We're in San Diego. Sometimes search users will use certified financial planners. So we've kind of, put that keyword in there. And then giving, each page and your site a description. Now, that might sound like a lot and daunting. And how do I even do that on my website? There's a simple free tool out there that you can install on your website called Yoast SEO. It is very easy to use. Anybody can use it. And once you launch Yoast SEO, it'll guide you step by step on how to add these titles and descriptions to each of your web pages. So I'll just stop there and see what else you want to talk about in terms of descriptions and titles.
So I haven't had a WordPress website in a long time. Is Yoast still only for WordPress? I just want to be
That's
clear.
a good question. Yeah. My expertise is on WordPress, so I'm not sure. I do think that they integrate with Squarespace and maybe Wix. I'm not sure, but some of the more user-friendly website platforms like Wix and Squarespace, they often make it easier for you to update titles and descriptions, is my understanding. So they might just have a tool built in to prompt you to do that. You may not need Yoast. I'm not sure. But now I also want to say, look, I love this stuff, right? Like I love learning about it. I love, trying and experimenting. However, us as financial advisors, like most of us really shouldn't be spending our time trying to figure out how to add meta titles and meta descriptions to our website. And so, I would encourage advisors to find a good web developer. I have a few different websites, and on my firm website, I pay about $120 a month just for regular maintenance with my web developer. But just a relationship like that allows me to email my team there and say, hey, can you update this meta title or this meta description? There are some other providers that can do it for a lower cost, 30 or 40 bucks a month. I guess what I'm getting at is you shouldn't have to figure this out. You should have somebody that you can email and say, hey, I'd like to improve my titles and descriptions on my website for SEO purposes. Can you help me do that? And let them tackle that. Like, we shouldn't really be getting lost in this stuff and distracted. We have work to do for our clients. So I do want to acknowledge that too, that not everyone has to figure this out on their own.
Yeah. It's important to have people like you leading the way. And I see a parallel in content marketing too, where a lot of advisors are like, oh, I've got to create this and do this podcast and do this video and do this status update. All that's well and good, especially if it suits your personality and you like it and you want to do it, but you've got a business to run. That I know one objection that is probably coming up in people's minds right now is they're thinking, well, Taylor, you're in San Diego. That's a big city. A lot of people are searching financial planner San Diego or financial advisor San Diego, but I'm in Podunk, Iowa or someplace or some little town in Arkansas. How is that going to help me? Should I still look at SEO? What is your response to that?
Yeah, there's kind of two ways that you can go about SEO. One is going after this local aspect, right? The San Diego financial advisor, San Diego financial planner. Even in a city like ours, where we have 3.5 million people, we only see about 200 people per month searching those keywords. So there's not a lot of volume there, but those are like very targeted keywords. Somebody going to Google and typing that in means they are looking for a financial advisor. It's not somebody casually scrolling Facebook and me putting an ad in front of them, right? It's somebody like really serious. So 200, 300 is a pretty good number. If you don't have that kind of search traffic, and you can easily do some keyword research to find out, the volume, there's some great free tools out there. I mean, Google Analytics will give you all that too. If you don't have that kind of search volume, there's two solutions. One is you can broaden it a little bit. My good friend Jeff Rose, he used to own the site goodfinancialsense.com. He's no longer he's no longer an advisor, but Jeff was an early marketing mentor of mine, and he was in a small town in Illinois called Carbondale, Illinois, and I don't know where Carbondale is. I don't think many people do. I think he told me one time it's like 50 miles to the closest grocery store or something. I don't know. So to combat that, he targeted the keyword Illinois. So he was Illinois financial advisor. He may have even targeted Chicago, since I don't know that Chicago is that far from him. So there are certain states and certain regions where that works. And California could actually be one of them too. A lot of people do search like California attorney or California advisor. So depending on where you're located, you can take that approach instead of like a really hyper local approach. The second solution to combat the issue is to have a really strong niche, right? And this is growing in popularity. Consumers aren't fully understanding that they can go search for a financial advisor that only works with optometrists, right? But we're getting there slowly but surely. And it's not all that different from the legal world, where you would go type in divorce attorney or personal injury attorney. You would never go type in attorney San Diego. You would never do that, right? Like you would go find a specific attorney that you're looking for. And I think that's where our business is headed. I have a good friend out in Florida. He only works with speech language pathologists. He's a financial advisor. That's all he works with. And I did a lot of SEO work with him actually. And we were able to target really specific things regarding speech language pathology in order to get traction and visibility online. So a little bit different of an angle there. But if you have a strong niche, you can go after that niche and the keywords associated with that niche instead of being focused on the local aspect, which makes sense too, because Craig works with speech language pathologists. His clients are all around the country, not just in Florida. Like he has such a tight niche that, someone could be in North Dakota, and if he's somebody that can help them, like they're going to reach out. So it allows you to kind of cast a wider net around the country, but also be really specific in your keywords.
That's something that's like a little secret. We're going to give it away on the show, of course, because like, why not? But sometimes I have advisors put like the keywords they want to target and like the local keywords into like Ahrefs or SEMrush, and they'll see like which ones have the lowest keyword difficulty and which areas do, like Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, whatever. And they will, if they're virtual, this doesn't work if they're geographically restricted, but if they're virtual, they'll just target whatever and take those searches from people. With the speech pathology thing, so you're saying that he goes after speech pathology terms, and then within the content, he's like, oh, by the way, I help these people with their finances. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a little bit different of a marketing strategy, and it's definitely longer term. Kind of phase one of that project is just to simply position him as a thought leader in the industry, right? Just like build trust with that audience and just become a financial expert to SLPs. And so it wasn't so much about let's try to find speech language pathologists that are searching for an advisor. Let's just try to again, gain visibility in that industry, because again, consumers just aren't smart enough to know that there are financial advisors out there that only work with dentists. They're not aware of that yet. So the more visibility you can build and the more trust you can build in that niche community, I think will just naturally start to lead towards some marketing success. That was kind of strategy there. Now, I do think eventually, and I think this is happening in some niches, in dentistry is probably a good example. I do think there is some search volume for, financial advisor for dentists or financial advisor for airline pilots. So I think you can start to get more, granular there. But yeah, if you only work with, I would just say optometrists, like think about or do keyword research around optometry and what kind of information people are looking for and what type of keywords they're searching for. And again, my goal would just be like add as much value as possible and just become a financial expert and kind of a go-to resource. And then you can start to get more tactical with your marketing from there. Yeah.
And that's a really good strategy. And that's kind of what I do personally, like with the Advisor Coach as a business. Financial advisor search, financial advisor terms. Yep. The site comes up. What if someone, I guess, has multiple niches or doesn't want to choose a niche? They can't go after terms like Roth IRA or traditional IRA because like those are going to get eaten alive because like Merrill Lynch and Amex, like, they will rank for those terms. Do you see any I don't know how to phrase this question. This is I'm not being a good podcast host right now, but are there any super specific untargeted, unearthed financial keywords that you've seen advisors go after and capitalize on?
Gosh, I don't know. I think, you can always think about current events too, right? If there are certain things going on, for example, we had a blog post, it was titled something like, is the stock market going to crash? And so, whenever we go through these periods of volatility and people get worried, that blog post starts to climb in the rankings for is the stock market going to crash? So I don't necessarily, suggest that you go out and, chase headlines and try to rank for current events, but that's one way to maybe get clever with it, especially if there are law changes, right? CARES Act, Secure Act type stuff. So, if you keep your finger on the pulse, and, Michael Kitces does a good job of this too, you might be able to capitalize on some of those more unique keywords that, haven't been swallowed up by now. So yeah, that'd be one example. I was going to go somewhere else too, but I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, that's a good idea. And I've seen a few advisors, now that you mention it, I've seen some do really well on YouTube with that. Because a lot of people, if there's current events, they want to watch videos about it. And they just go there. PPP loan was, oh my goodness, it was hot on YouTube when it first came out. Everybody was looking like, how do I get the PPP loan? Do I qualify? Is it 2 paycheck cycles? Is it 2 months? They were looking.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that advice. Aside from SEO, I guess, are there any other marketing strategies that have been working for you, I guess, in the past year or so?
Really quick. I just want to go back to your previous question. I remember where I was going to go. You had asked about, somebody with multiple niches, and this question often comes up when it's a larger firm and there's, 10 different advisors there and they do work with multiple demographics. And I think one potential solution there to consider is to have a home base, to have a website for the firm, of course, that's a little bit more broad in nature, but still has a user journey for prospective clients, and encourage and help those advisors that you have kind of own a particular niche and develop a personal brand and their own personal website around that niche. So we've seen some larger firms starting to do this. So let them go out, have their own website that's just targeted towards dentists or millennials or retirees, and all roads should lead back to that main website that has that clear journey. But those different advisors are able to, again, get really tactical and just, target a particular niche with that website and that personal brand. So, if I was a larger firm and I had multiple advisors to handle, that's the approach I would probably take. It gets a little confusing when someone lands on your website and it's like, hey, we work with these 10 different demographics. So that's just one way to consider it. In terms of other marketing strategies, I thought, I'd share one thing that I'm seeing working right now, but before, like something, tactical and tangible people can take home and go and try to implement. Before I do that, I just want to really kind of highlight that if you're struggling to find success in the digital marketing world, if you're like, I've tried SEO, doesn't work. I've tried a podcast, doesn't work. I've tried, whatever. I would say to hit the brakes on all of your marketing. And I would go back and I would just pick one single thing that you enjoy, that comes natural to you, that feels authentic to you. And I would just obsess over that one single thing and only do that one thing. Like, stop searching for a magical solution. Stop trying to find the thing that's trending. Just because everyone else is starting a podcast doesn't mean you have to start a podcast. So if you're struggling in the digital marketing, side of things, just like hit the brakes and really think about, what do you enjoy doing? And it could be, I really love writing. Okay, great. Like, that's what I want you to do. All I want you to do is just to write, right? And just obsess over writing, become a student of that side of marketing, like study other people that are good at writing, study other blogs, go to blogging conferences, buy blogging courses, whatever, just like obsess over that one single thing. It could be writing. It could be public speaking. It could be doing webinars. It could be a podcast. I always, joke, like it could be, handwriting letters and mailing them to your target demographic. I really don't care what it is, but I promise you that if you just pick one thing, and it has to come natural to you, you have to enjoy doing it. It has to give you energy. If you obsess over that one thing and you just figure out, how can I add more value? How can I get better at this thing? And you're constantly learning and improving, and you give it time and you give it that 2 to 3 years, you will find success with it. The problem I see is advisors say, oh, I want to start social media marketing, and they go start a Twitter and a Facebook and a LinkedIn and a TikTok and all these things. Well, like you can't be good at all those things. Also, your target demographic probably doesn't live on all those different platforms. So I would find one social media platform, the one where your target market lives, the one that you enjoy spending time on, and just obsess over that one channel and own it. Once you find success there and you've got a good process, then you can start to stack other things on top. Like, okay, I've mastered podcasting. Like, what else can I do? What else can I add to my, what I call your marketing wheel? We want to have 5 to 6 different marketing activities that we're doing consistently, that we do them well. Again, they give us energy, they come natural to us. And those 5 or 6 things all kind of work together to contribute to our marketing success. I was sharing the other day how, local SEO for a while had been the sole producer for a lot of our new clients. Last year in 2020, it just kind of dried up. And I don't really know why. I'm sure COVID had a big part in that. But those prospects coming from local SEO really kind of dried up. But I've got a retirement podcast, and that picked up the slack. And most of our new clients last year came directly from the retirement podcast, people that were not in San Diego. I think almost all of our new clients last year came from out of state. And so it's a really good example of having multiple marketing activities that are working together, and these things ebb and flow. So that's just kind of my rant there. I just really like to drill that home. One tactical kind of marketing strategy that I spent a lot of time on last year that I've seen a lot of success with is what I call like a content cleanup. And I'll just use blogging as an example, since blogging's been very popular for a long time now. Maybe you've, chaotically written on your blog for the last, several years. Google these days, I'll back up and say, in the early days of SEO, it was quantity over quality. It's like, if you just wrote every single day, just the quantity, the volume, Google would reward you for it. And you would, have visibility and show up online. Now there's so much content out there that it's been flipped on its head, and Google's like, okay, right now it's quality over quantity. I don't care how long something is or how many blogs you publish, it's quality over quantity. So you could have, if you're a retirement planning expert, you could have 10 of the very best blog posts on retirement planning topics, just like the absolute very best, Kits' style, 4,000 words. and Google is going to reward you for it. And so what we did, we had, I don't know how many blog posts on our website, 50, 100, I'm not sure, but we went through this blog cleanup process and we got rid of content that was just not good. It didn't speak to our target demographic. So we just simply deleted that content out of the blog. We cleaned it out of there. Blog posts that were still fitting, we improved. So we looked at them and we had, some independent contractors that helped with this process, but how can we make this blog post even better? How can we improve the title? Can we add some new media elements to this? Can we can we embed a podcast into it? Can we record a short video to add? Can we include a table of contents? Whatever, how can we make this blog post even more valuable than it is today? And we would go through that process and we would republish that post with a new published date. So even if it was published in 2016, we would republish it with a new date. So, July 1st, 2020 or whatever. And basically signaling to Google, hey, Google, I've updated this blog post. I've added more value to it and we've republished it. And Google likes to see things being improved and things being republished. A lot of times too, these blog posts, they are outdated. They've got contribution limits that are, 3 years old and those have changed, or they're referencing tax laws that don't exist anymore. One of the blog posts we had about Bitcoin was talking about Bitcoin being at 8,000. Well, it's at 40,000 today. It's just totally irrelevant. So Google really appreciates you keeping, this stuff updated and really cleaned up and adding more value. And we went through the entire blog and just cleaned everything up. The last part of all that was consolidating some of the content. So we had 3 or 4 blog posts on improving your credit score and what a credit score is and what a credit freeze is. And basically what we did is we leaned on our writer to take those 4 blog posts and just turn them into one really awesome blog post on all things credit score, credit freeze related. So consolidating content and improving content at the same time is what we're finding is really, really helpful, especially from SEO and online visibility standpoint. So I know that was a lot, but you asked for it, and that is one strategy that I'm really seeing working right now. And it's something that you can outsource a lot of it to. You don't have to do it yourself.
Well, I think a lot of financial advisors don't realize that they're cannibalizing their own content, or they've been sold this idea that they need to write blog posts every single week. And they write one about, like you just said, credit score this, credit score that, credit score this, and they're just cannibalizing it. And it hurts their rankings that way. And personally, if I help a financial advisor and they talk about this and they see their so-called competitors, I don't believe in that there's really competition, but they'll say, oh, well, Bob down the street is publishing this. It's let him do it. You don't realize that he's sabotaging himself. So the people who understand what you just said, where you're putting all the content together, you're doing the cleanup and you're just quality over quantity, that is so true. And from a business perspective, like being an entrepreneur, it's a heck of a lot easier to manage than hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point that I think a lot about, which is I think us advisors, we see what somebody else does and we figure, oh, if they're doing that, I should do that. Oh, they have a pop-up on their blog. I should put a pop-up on my blog, right? Or, hey, they've got a scheduling link on their homepage. I'm going to put a scheduling link on my homepage. And that's the extent of the thought that they put into it. And what I often think about is, okay, they have a scheduling link front and center on their homepage. How does that make me feel? If I'm the consumer, I have no idea who James is. I just landed on James's website and just front and center, he's asking me to schedule a phone call. It's kind of a bit of a turnoff to me. It's kind of a big ask for a total stranger. So I often think how does something feel to me on the other end? And it doesn't have to be in our industry either. I'll flip through a magazine and an ad will jump out to me. It's wow, why did that ad jump out to me? Why did it stop me? Why did that billboard really get me thinking? Or why do I remember that billboard from a year ago? So just be careful about just because somebody else is doing it means you should do it. And that's me included. You could copy and paste my website. There are advisors that have done that, unfortunately. You could copy and paste my website. I promise you're not going to have the same success or any success at all. You need to make the stuff your own. There needs to be intention behind it. There needs to be processes behind it. So just be really, really careful about falling into that trap.
They don't hear you though. They want to copy. But you've been super generous with your time. This has been awesome. I have a feeling this is probably going to be like top 5, top 10 episodes that gets downloaded. I know you do a lot of stuff. You got the Stay Wealthy podcast, Experiments in Advisor Marketing. You got Define Financial. If somebody wants to get in touch with you or maybe learn more or ask you questions, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best place is go to my personal website, taylorschulte.com. You can basically find everything that I'm up to there. There's a contact form there if you want to shoot me a message. These days, I spend most of my time inside the AGC. The AGC is a private community for financial advisors. I think Facebook meets Twitter, meets LinkedIn, just all in a private space online. And that's really where I'm engaging with other advisors these days. We have about 140 advisors around the country. And that's where I, love to answer questions and learn from other advisors and really engage in dialogue. So again, I would just go to taylorschulte.com. If you like today's episode, the Experiments in Advisor Marketing podcast has a lot more of it. And you can go back and listen to the 24 or 5 episodes that have been published.
And it's a good podcast, Financial Advisors. I recommend that you listen to it. So thank you for your time, Financial Advisors. I am going to catch you next week.
This is the podcastfactory.com.